Okay, so far we've learned a little bit about what these drawings look like. We've learned the basic process of how things get drawn in AutoCAD. You're practicing the command line. You understand that this is just an XY grid, and you can draw lines and rectangles and circles. And now you've learned how to use some of the drawing aids that AutoCAD has to help you line things up and lay it out really clearly, and which is like super useful. Because there's a precision to AutoCAD in terms of just like how precise the positioning of things can be. It goes down to like, I don't know, 6 decimal places or something. That's really hard to keep track of yourself without those like object snaps and stuff like that. So you've learned a little bit about that. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to learn a couple new things today. First of all, we're going to learn some ways to organize all the things you've drawn into layers that will let you do sort of process them in batches and stuff, which is super useful. For example, like let's say you've drawn a big thing, like one of these, something like this, and you decide later that, I really want all of these connector lines, these purple lines, I really want them to be thicker. There's a lot of those in this drawing, and you don't want to have to go in one at a time and change the line weight on them. That would be super annoying. So we're going to learn some ways to prepare for those moments and using layers. We're also going to learn about how text works today. How do you set up all of these labels? Because you're going to have to label a lot of things in these drawings, because ultimately we're using the same symbols over and over and over and over again. And how are you supposed to know what is what? Well, it's because you're going to label it. You're going to have little words that say what this thing is. And given what you've now learned about how tricky it is to position things accurately or space them out in a way that's nice, like you don't want your text labels to be fighting you on that. You don't want to get something in the place it needs to be and then try to put the label in it and realize that the text you need to type in there bleeds off outside of the rectangle or something. That would be super annoying. So we're going to learn a little bit about that. So let's start by just making a new AutoCAD document. Okay? And if you would like, you can save it, which would be a super good idea. Annotated diagram demo. So the first thing I want to do is let's make some layers. And before we make these layers, let's take a look at what we're doing and start thinking about what the layers might do for us. So this is what you're going to draw today. You're going to draw all of these symbols, okay? Just like the ones that I gave you last week. You're going to actually draw them yourself now, rather than just copying them from my thing, because these are going to be yours. You're going to use these the rest of your life. If you do this right, by the end of this class, you will have an AutoCAD template that you can use for the rest of your life. You'll never have to draw these things again. Okay, so if you draw the last speaker correct this week, you'll never have to draw another last speaker again in your life. Okay, so that's my goal. Is I want you to get it right now, so you don't have to draw anymore. Because you can see from the project this last week how quickly you can get something really big done if you're not having to draw all those lines, right? If you're just taking things that already exist and you're just duplicating them, it goes pretty quick. It would take you forever if you had to actually draw all those lines manually. It would weeks would take you to do that. So you're gonna start creating your own library of symbols that you're going to use over and over and over again. So I'm going to draw these, and then you're going to use your own symbols to draw this diagram, which is a simpler version of what we did this last week. It's just not quite as complicated. So let's take a look at what we're doing here. Well, we need to figure out how do we want to group the different kinds of lines that we're drawing. Well, we have these lines that are like the boxes around things, that indicate the piece of equipment. Okay, so that's one kind of thing. So those exterior boxes that surround the equipment. We have these interior lines inside of those things that vary. That's a different thing. We've got these lines that we use to connect boxes and connect objects. That's a different kind of line. We've got a couple of different kinds of text here. So we've got some big text that we use to kind of define what these things are. And that though, you notice how that's all one size. So that's one kind of group of things. And then we've got some smaller text that we're using on the inside of things. So that would be a second kind of text group that we would use. And then the other thing I might want to do is just create a group of other things that are not those things that might come up that I want to have grouped differently. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the layers in AutoCAD to do this. Every AutoCAD drawing comes with one layer. It's called layer 0. And you should have the layer list that pops up by default. Anybody lose their layer list? Yes? Cora's lost.
It's not there. I don't know.
Let's get it back. We're going to need it. Okay, get out of full screen. And go to Window. Layers. Yep. So if you've lost it, you might need to go to this window menu and check layers. You're also going to want this properties inspector. Layers and property inspector. So if you've turned those off somewhere along the way, turn them back on. You may have closed them at some point to get them out of your way. But you're going to need them now. That work? Everybody got it? Okay. So every AutoCAD drawing comes with a layer 0. And so far we've, like on that first project where I just had you draw on layer 0. But drawing on layer 0 is considered bad form for a couple of reasons. The main reason is that every AutoCAD drawing has a layer 0. And part of the point of layers is to group things together so that you can style them or affect them or process them together. And so if you are drawing on layer 0, then now if no one else is ever going to look at your AutoCAD file and no one else is going to you're never going to give anyone a copy of this AutoCAD file to, I don't know, insert into their drawing or, merge theirs into yours or something like that, then, drawing on layer 0 is never going to be a problem for you. But what tends to happen on a lot of projects where you're going to do sound system drawings is you're going to be working on a team. And that team might be other people, other sound people sometimes, but it's also going to involve other people like architects or technical directors or scenic designers or lighting designers or electricians. And a lot of times you end up sharing your drawings with each other so that you can put them on top of each other in the computer and see hey, are we both trying to use the same physical point in space for 3 different things? And so that happens all the time. You merge each other's drawings and look at them on top of each other. And if you're all drawing on layer 0 in AutoCAD and you've done some styling on layer 0, then guess what happens? If you put your file into someone else's and yours is on layer 0, and they've also drawn a layer 0, then your layer 0 is going to inherit the properties of their layer 0. And all of your stuff's going to look different. Or vice versa. So, so that's why drawing on layer 0 is kind of considered bad form, because it makes it tricky when you start sharing files, okay? Because every AutoCAD file has that layer 0, which means you have no idea what styling might be on that layer in someone else's file. So it's best to just not use it. So no more drawing on layer 0. The only time I draw on layer 0 if I'm just doing a quick sketch of something, and I'm not going to share it with anybody. I'm just like, I don't want to waste the time making layers for something that I'm just going to spend 10 minutes on, because I find, for me, drawing things out helps me understand it. If I'm trying to figure out how am I going to do this, sometimes just like cracking open AutoCAD for a minute and just doing a quick little diagram of what I think helps me work out the details. And it may not ever be a drawing I show to anybody else. It's just I need to take a half hour and just draw this out for a second. And so in those cases, I'll draw on layer 0 just because I'm not going to like spend a lot of time on this. I'm never going to show it to anybody. I'm probably not even going to finish the drawing. I'm going to draw enough of it until I've answered the questions I want to answer, and then I'm going to delete it and never look at it again. And in that case, drawing on layer 0 is fine. No one cares. It saves you some time. You don't have to make a bunch of extra layers and do things. But generally speaking, no layer 0. So let's make some layers. You're going to hit this little button here on the bottom left of your layer window. And if you hover over it, it should say New Layer. So just click that a few times. I made 5 layers. So let's start naming these. So I'm going to make a layer for sound equipment. These will be like the boxes that are around things. And then I'm going to add some unique blob of text that no one else will ever use, theoretically. Again, because I don't ever want, if I have another person that is a sound person that maybe took the exact same class that I did, and I'm working with them now on a project and we're sharing files back and forth, and they have their layers named the exact same thing as my layers because they took the exact same class that I took and did the same thing that I did. I don't want to have to worry about that style conflict. So it's a good idea to just like add some unique thing to the end of your layer name just to stop those, because AutoCAD, if it sees the same name, it's just going to merge it when you import that drawing. So you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to put JR for my initials. That hopefully is enough to thwart anything. Now, if you have the same initials as someone else on your team, then you got to figure out something else. But you can also just literally randomly put some nonsense in there. But that's just a little pro tip. Not everybody does that, but I like to do that just because I've been burned by that before, where I've merged my drawing with someone else's and I just happen to have, like the one that happens all the time is just sound, because like the technical director, when they make the drawings of the space, they usually have a layer that they call sound. They're trying to be helpful because they're thinking, well, this is where if I need to draw any sound things, I'll put that there. But that's probably where you're going to start. You're going to name your layer sound too, and you're going to put stuff on there, and then you put your drawing into theirs, and suddenly stuff looks weird. That's the classic one that happens all the time. Is the layer called sound. So I'm going to get a little more specific than that. So we're going to do a sound equipment layer. Let's do one that will be. I'm going to call this. This will be for the lines inside the equipment boxes. So we'll call this sound equipment, or maybe just sound interior. Something like that. Doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want, but the interior lines. I think I'm going to add equip interior. Let's do one called sound connect. And this will be for the lines that connect boxes together. And then I'll do one that is sound text mid, JR, like my middle size text. And then I'll do one called sound text small for the little text that's inside of things. I'm going to make one more that's, I'm just going to call this sound other, JR, just other things that I haven't thought of before. And then I want to make some colors for these things, just because that's the colors help you know what layer you've drawn it on. Just because that way you'll know if you've got it in the right place or not. Because the layers only help you if you draw the right lines on the right layers. If you draw them on a different layer, then the layers don't help you. So having each layer have a different color will help you know when you've drawn it on the right layer or not. Because if you are, for example, I'm going to make my sound equipment layer green, and so if I'm drawing an equipment box and it turns pink on me, I'm going to go, oh, I'm on the wrong layer, and you can fix that before you get too far down that road. So we'll do sound equipment. I'll do that as green. You can do whatever colors you want. Okay, you can knock yourself out. I have strong feelings about colors once we get to the plotting stage, when you start putting it on a white piece of paper or a white, virtual paper background. I have strong feelings about what colors are appropriate and what are not. But I will give you that lecture another day. But for this, your colors can be whatever you want. Okay, so knock yourself out. I'm going to do, but just keep in mind that for this kind of thing with a system diagram, you're mostly going to be looking at this against this black backdrop in AutoCAD, and the system diagrams tend to get plotted in monochrome, so the colors only matter while you're drawing, so try to pick colors that look good against that dark background. Okay, so the sound connect, I'm going to use this magenta color. The interior, I'm going to use this cyan color. I think for the sound other, I'm going to use some kind of gray. So let me go find a gray that I like. Maybe that one. The sound text mid, I think I'm going to use the cyan again for that. I'll use yellow for that, actually. And then the small text, I'll use cyan. Okay? That's how I'm going to do it, but you can pick whatever colors you want. I don't care. Okay, so now we can start drawing some stuff. So let's draw our first little equipment box here. Okay, this one. So I'm going to start by, well, first of all, I want to make sure I'm on the equipment layer. So there's this drop-down menu at the top of your layers list. You're going to select sound equipment. Now that's the layer. And now anything I draw will go onto that layer because that's the active layer. So I'm going to do a rectangle, REC. And I'll click down here. And I'm going to do, for dimensions, I'll do the same thing we did before, 25, 10. And there's my rectangle. Did you see how I did that? Where, because you've got the dynamic input and the tracking going on now, all you got to do is click this bottom, drag your mouse over to the right and up, and now it's asking for the other corner, and you can do this in relative coordinates. It doesn't have to be absolute coordinates. It can be relative to that corner you started with. So if I just do 25, 10, it will draw it as a 25 unit wide, 10 unit tall box relative to that corner that I started with. Okay. All right. So now I want to draw the line inside, this line here that creates that title area. So that's going to be an interior line. So I'm going to switch to my interior layer. And I'm going to use my L command for line. What I want to do is I want to track down from this top corner 2 units. So I'm going to hover over it and then track my mouse down and then hit 2, enter. And it should drop that line 2 units down from that top corner. You need to see me do that again? Okay. Look at me. I'm going to do L, enter. I'm going to hover over that top corner, and then I'm going to track my mouse down from there and do 2, enter. And it should drop the starting point exactly 2 units down from the corner. Yes?
Why not just use the offset tool?
Because I haven't taught you the offset tool. But sure, if you know the offset tool, knock yourself out. Like, I don't care about that. All right. So there's that line. And then, let's see, what else do we need to draw here? Well, I need to draw these input and output groups, right? So what would you say if you know that this is 2 units tall, this space? How tall would you say this space is? It's a little more than 1 unit, right? But it's not quite 2, so I'm going to say 1.5, right? So it's just like a get used to like looking at something and being like, how big is that relative to the other thing? I think that's about 1.5. So I'm going to just start by drawing a rectangle. I'm going to start it here at the bottom of this corner, and I'm going to just set it up as 10 units wide. Oops. Hang on. Rectangle. So I'll do 10, comma 1.5. Why 10? Well, because I know this is 25 units wide, and I've got this little gap there between it that looks about 5 units. So I'm guessing these are 20 units wide. Okay. Okay. And then I need to take my line here that I put that number label in, you see? And that sure looks like a square to me, doesn't it? And so that is probably 1.5 units in from the edge. So I'll do another line, and I'll track in from this side, do a 1.5, and go there. Okay? Now what I want to do is I want to explode this rectangle that I made.
Could you go over making the line again?
Which one?
The smaller square.
This one?
So, yeah.
Sure. So I'm going to enter the line command. I'm going to start at the top left corner of this rectangle, and then I'll track over to the right and just type 1.5, and then it starts the line there, and then I snap it vertically to the bottom. Yeah? All right. So like I say, now what I want to do is I want to explode this rectangle, because I'd like these to be individual lines. Because what I don't want is I don't necessarily want to just copy this rectangle, because then those lines will be overlapping, and then I'll get that weird overlap problem sometimes. So and Jason will give you a hard time about that. So so I'm going to explode this rectangle now. So I'm just going to select it and say explode. And now I can, if I just look at where I need to make 2 more of these. So I'm going to select everything except the bottom line of this rectangle. You see how I did that? And I'm going to just do a copy. And I'm going to go from the bottom corner to the top corner a couple of times. Okay, so now I got 3 of those and no overlapping lines. Except for the ones on the edge, I suppose, which we'll get to in a sec. I'm actually inclined to leave those there for reasons that I will explain in a moment. But all right, so I've got that. Now in order to get this right, I just want to delete the top vertical line because I don't need that one. So I'm just going to erase that. And then I just want to move this up to where I think it needs to be. So I've got this whole thing now, and I'm going to move it. I think that line is probably, no, not quite. I'm trying to find a logical snap point here. Maybe that. No. That looks better. All right, I like that. Okay. Now I need this exact same thing on the other side. So what do you think? What's the best way to do this? Yeah, I'm just totally mirror this. I'm not going to draw all those lines again. There's no point. So I'm just going to select them all, MI, enter, and mirror across that midpoint. There you go. All right, how are we feeling about that? I'll pause for a minute for you to catch up. Yeah.
I'm having trouble coming down from the top to get exactly 2. It just puts a point anywhere. I'm not quite sure.
Do you have the object snap tracking turned on?
I think so. I'm trying to find because I'm in Windows, so it's
Yeah, looks like you. Okay, so pull it tracking. Hang on. Go back. Try it again. Okay, you're snapping to something. Let's check your object snaps. Get out of the command. Escape. Right click on your object snaps. The other one. Oh yeah. Okay. So there's the problem. We need to turn a bunch of those off.
Gotcha.
So turn off geometric center. Turn off extension. Turn off insertion. Perpendicular tangent. Sorry. That's me. There you go. Also, you've got your snap to grid turned on, which is also giving you a little bit of trouble. How would turn that on?
Wait, no, but
No, good.
how do I just make the display
Oh, if you hover over the edge of that, right there, get out of full screen mode. You guys always go into this full screen mode, and then you can't see the menus. So we're right over there, over the edge of that one. It's not gonna Yeah, what you could do is hover over the top of that properties. See, there you go. Now drag that down at least. There. And so ultimately you're looking for that. Somehow there's a, I'm not too in front of you, there's a place where you can drag that out. At least let's just see there. Okay. Okay, any other questions? Everybody caught up? All right, so now what I want to do is I want to draw these little connection lines that go on the other side. And now you're going to understand why I wanted to leave those overlapping lines. Because I'm going to switch to my Sound Connect layer. And And I'm going to draw a line, and I'm going to snap to the midpoint of that little line that's overlapping. Right? If I had deleted it, I would have no midpoint snap. Okay? So I'm going to do that, and then I'll track it out 2 units. And now I know it's perfectly centered on that little square. And now I can just take it and copy it from midpoint to midpoint. And then I'll mirror it from one side to the other. And I got it. Yeah? So that's why I want to leave those little overlapping lines. And the way, yes?
It won't snap to like the midpoint, it just snaps to the two.
You may not have midpoint snap turned on. So right-click on your object snap. And turn on midpoint snap. There you go. Okay. How are we doing? Pretty good? Do I need to wait? Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm about to move on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, everyone's caught up. So now we need to start tackling text. Okay, now here's the thing about text. It's weird in AutoCAD. AutoCAD is not a word processor, okay? And to understand a little bit about how text works, you have to understand a little bit about, again, where did we come from, okay? How did we get to where we are now with this tool? Go back in time to the days of those pen plotters, right? It was literally a robotic arm holding a pen, drawing it on the piece of paper for you. Well, you also need that pen, with the robotic arm, to draw and write this text for you. And the way that printers work with fonts is there's a couple different things that can happen. Sometimes the printer has a copy of the font definition stored in the printer itself. And so when you send a print command to a printer, part of the command is, hey, here's the text, but you're going to render this text using this font. And that font file is sitting on the printer. Sometimes, depending on the printer protocol, sometimes that information gets sent with the print command. Hey, here's all this text, draw it using this font, here's the information about the font. But those are separate, okay? Well, the way that those font files work doesn't make any sense to a robotic arm that's holding a pen. It doesn't work that way, okay? So AutoCAD had to create their own font protocol that was specifically for these pen plotters, okay? That were fonts that could be rendered and drawn with a pen, okay? And so, because the part of the other problem that happens, and maybe you've experienced this even when you've worked with word processing, is that fonts look different. You can have the same font, and it renders very differently large than it does when it's small, right? And one of the ways that becomes a problem is this issue. And if you've ever taken a class in graphic design or something, you probably would have. Anybody done any graphic design classes? Yes? No? Okay. So here's one of the things they would teach you in a graphic design class. They will say there are 2 kinds of fonts in this world. They wouldn't say font, they would say type. There's 2 kinds of type in this world. There's serifed type and there's sans serif type. So in other words, there's fonts that have serifs on them and there's fonts that don't have serifs on them. And the serifs are, well, let me do this. Let me show you. I'm going to open up the font book on my computer. Okay, so this Adobe Garamond, that is a serifed font. And the serifs are these little pointy things that stick out of it. You see how, like, even on the C, it has these little pointy things. On the B, the pointy things come off the side of it, right? Those are the serifs, okay? And then there's fonts that don't have serifs, like this one. See how it doesn't have the pointy things sticking off of it? That is a sans serif font, meaning no serifs. Well, the serifs tend to work pretty well when the text is really large. And it looks nice, and you can read it easily, and they help. But when the text gets really small, it's really hard to render those tiny little points when they're small, because the resolution of the printer itself sometimes becomes a limitation. It just like can't do it. And so, generally speaking, it's been a long time since I took a graphic design class, but I think this is still how they feel about this. Generally speaking, you want to use sans serif fonts for tiny things, and save the serif fonts for big things. I am of the mind that serif fonts have no place in a technical drawing. Okay? For a number of reasons, but mainly is that the scale of this drawing is going to be different all over the place. Like you're going to scale it one way when you're looking at it on the screen, when you put it on a PDF file, when you put it on paper. You're going to look at this thing in all different shapes and sizes, and you just don't want to have to deal with those little pointy things, not rendering correctly, or sometimes the pointy thing goes outside of your box because it has to in order to render it, and that's super annoying. So I'm of the mind that serifed fonts have no place in a technical drawing. That's my opinion. You're paying a lot of money for my opinion right now, so I'm not going to be shy about sharing it with you. So we're going to first just take all of those fonts off of our list. Okay, we're not going to do that. So we're going to stick to sans serif fonts. But here's the other thing. Even with serifed fonts, let's pull one up here. Let me do this one. Look what happens with this font with different letters. See how this W is wider than this R? And then this one actually is not too bad when you make it small. But that variable width thing can sometimes cause you trouble if some letters aren't the same width. They don't space the same. But this one's not too bad. You see how the width of the line for the font gets thinner as I zoom out. Imagine the pen that's drawing this. If you just had a pen, you say draw that A really big and then draw it small. With a pen, the line would be the same thickness for the small one versus the big one. And so it's hard for a pen plotter to render a font like this, because this font and its readability at small sizes is dependent on the printer's ability to scale that line weight of the font. Okay? So, I'm saying all of this to help you understand what you're about to see in the list of fonts that are available in AutoCAD. Okay? So, in AutoCAD, fonts are called text or text styles. And text styles are your friend. And you can see all about them using the style command. So here's the style command. It brings up this window called text style. And what you will see is there are two kinds of fonts in this list. AutoCAD is able to use what's called true type fonts, and those are indicated by the TT icon next to them. And it can also use SHX fonts. And the SHX, those are the old pen plotter fonts. They're still here, even though nobody uses a pen plotter anymore. So the ones that are SAXs are the ones that come with AutoCAD, and they're specifically kind of relics of that old world thing. But I still like them because I'm old and stuck in my ways, I guess. But the nice thing about these pen plotter fonts, these SH fonts, is that they have line weight definitions about them. Therefore, when you scale them, AutoCAD does a little bit better job of dealing with that, in my experience. So when you mess with your line weights, these tend to respond. So I like to use them. I would, especially because they scale really well between big and small. So I would suggest using them. The only time I use the true type fonts is for my title blocks, which we'll get to in a couple weeks. But for stuff like this, I'm going to use the pen fonts. Now, here's the thing. Notice how you have two styles that are already in your list, annotative and standard. Every AutoCAD document comes with those two styles. And you have all the same rules about those two styles as you have about layers, which is that don't use them. Don't use the standard text style, ever. Because every AutoCAD file has it. And therefore, and you can customize it. You can customize that standard text style. And so somebody else will have the standard text style, and it'll be called standard, and they will have changed it to use a different font or a different size or different whatever. And then you merge your drawing with theirs, and your standard becomes their standard, and suddenly all your stuff looks wrong. Okay? So don't use the standard text style. Just don't do it. It's considered bad form, and it'll cause you trouble if you use it. It's there for quick and dirty. I just want to put a piece of text on something, and I don't care because I'm not going to share it with anybody. Then fine, use the standard. But if it's on something that there's any chance in the universe that you're ever going to share this drawing with someone else that's running AutoCAD, do not use that standard text style, or the annotative for that matter. The annotative only really comes into play for some specific tools. But so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a text style. I'm just going to hit this little plus button, and this will be my sound mid, and I'll put my initials on it for my middle-sized text. And I need to pick a font here for this. Now, the one I really like is this one. It's Romans.shx, and I like it because it's one of those pen plot fonts. It doesn't have serifs, and it doesn't seem to have like a ton of problems with the variance between, like it's not exactly a fixed width font. Fixed width meaning like every character is the same exact width and everything. It's not exactly fixed width, but it's fixed enough that I don't run into a ton of problems with using weird words that have letters that get really wide and it messes up my alignment. So I really like this one. So I use it most of the time. Now, if, this is, for some of you, this is going to just really break your heart because it's a pretty boring little style of text. But telling you, it really works well with the kinds of drawings that we do. You are free to explore and play around with these text styles, but just keep in mind these things that I'm telling you. Which is, it's not just about, does it look pretty to you and you like that font? It's like, is it going to work? Is it going to do what you need it to do? And that's more important, okay? Because you want it to always be clear. You want it to always be readable, no matter how big or small it is. You want it to not give you problems. For example, one of the things that you run into with some fonts is you do a comma or some other symbol like that, and suddenly you've got a piece of your text overlapping with one of your bracket lines or something, because it drops it down below. And that's the worst, because then it touches the line, and then I give you a hard time about that. So anyway, I'm just giving you some warnings, some reasons that I'm telling you the things I'm telling you, and it's because I've just been bit enough that. Anyway, this is a good font, Romans. All right, maybe you'll like it too. I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to use that, and for my mid text size, I think I'm going to do 1.5, because this is the text that's going to sit in that title area. And I know that in that box, that's a 2-unit high box, right? So I don't want this to be 2 units tall, because then it's going to touch. Okay? So I'm going to say 1.5. It'll be the height for this. And that's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to make another one and call this my sound small. Also going to use that Romans font. But this height is only going to be 1. Again, because I know that those small boxes are 1.5 units tall, so I don't want them to touch, so I'm going to do 1 unit just so that I know I'll have a little bit of space. Okay. So we'll just start with those 2, and we should be good to go now. All right, so I'm going to make these labels now. And I'm going to start by going to my sound text mid layer. And I'm going to do this text that goes in this title area, which is called type or use, is what I'm going to put in here. So the command is, surprise, surprise, text, enter. And it says, specify a start point for the text. Well, for now, I'm not going to try to put it inside of this box, because I don't really know what's going to happen when I do that. I don't know where I need to start it. I'm just going to make it, and then I'll figure out how to get it where I need it to be. So I'm just going to click somewhere outside this box to specify the start point. So I'll just go there. And the next thing it says is specify the rotation angle of the text. So you can rotate this stuff. It defaults to 0. That's what I want. I don't want to rotate this. I'm not doing anything fancy. So I just hit enter, and this is all right, type the text. So in technical drawings, you do all caps. Okay? So this is going to be, what does it say? Type or use. Type or use. And then I'm going to do this number, this sign in parentheses. Now the text object is just single line text. You can't do a second line here. If I hit enter, it'll fake you out and make you think you're going to get a second line, but you're not. So if you just hit enter again, you're good to go. So there is my text. Now, I want to make sure that I used the right text style for this. So if I look down here in my properties, I can see that it's using the small. So I want to make sure I'm using the mid. Hang on. That's the wrong font. Okay, let me look at my styles again. Did it not take? Oh, yeah, it's still using that Arial. Okay, let me go back and let me get my Romans. Let's get that right. And I want this to be 1.5. Ah, it's not taking it. Why is it not taking it? Weird. All right, I'm gonna delete this and make it again. Style in use. Oh, that's why. It won't let me fix it because I'm using it. So let me switch it over to the other one for now, and then I'll fix it. Okay, so this mid should be the Romans 1.5. Okay, does it take this time? No. All right, I'm gonna delete it and just try to make it again. Romans, the small needs to be 1.0. No, 1.0. That's what I said. Strange. I don't know why this thing is not responding to me. The computer is disobeying us. Anybody get that reference? No? Will it do it? Will it take it that way? Maybe. Oh, it did. Ooh, it could catch. I wonder if that's like a new thing with those 2026. It used to be you could just hit enter and it would go. Okay, I'll try it again. So, sound mid, there. This is also going to be Romans, and I want it to be 1.5. Apply. There we go. Okay, good. It's working now. Anyway, nobody got my Office reference? Okay. No Office fans here, huh? What's that?
I have a hatred for The Office.
Oh, all right.
I love sitcoms. I hate The Office.
All right, we can still be friends.
Jason said he's gonna be friends with someone? What?
What you guys do?
Friends is a different thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm going to try this again. I'm going to specify the start point, 0, and we're going to call this type or use number. And I am on the right text style now, I believe. Style, sound, mid. Yes, okay, perfect. And my height is 1.5. All right, so what I want to do is I need to stick this in here, but I need it. Here's the thing, I don't ever know what exactly I'm going to put right in here. Like when I use this device, or this block, I'm going to change this text all the time. It's going to say something different every single time. So I got to make sure that as I change it, it doesn't end up like messing it up. Because look, if I just take it and stick it in here, first of all, it's too big. I can see that now. Even though the height was 1.5, that's not enough to make this work. So let's try going straight to 1. All right, I like that better. But how do I get it like centered vertically in there? That's the first problem. But look at this next problem. So even if I can get it more or less centered here, and if I go to change it now, so if I double click on this and I change it, and I'm going to call this now a mixing console, it's not centered the same way it used to be. What if this is a DSP? Well, now it's weird. Okay, see how this is going to be a problem for me? All right, so I've learned a couple things now as I've experimented. I'm going to go back to I'm going to erase that, go back to my text styles. I'm going to change these. So I'm going to set the mid to 1 now. And I'm going to set the small to something even smaller. So maybe We'll try 0.75 and see if that works. My guess is it's probably actually going to end up needing to be 0.5. We'll try 0.5 actually. Okay, so I'm going to try this again now. I'm going to make this label again, and we'll call it type or use number. And now what I want to do is I am going to give myself what I'm going to call a little like, I don't know, a little reference line to help me position this. Because what I really want to do is I want to make sure I'm positioning it exactly in the center of this title area, both vertically and horizontally. And I want to make sure that as I change the text, it will grow out from that center point, not from the left. Okay? So if I select this little text object, I can go down here to the justify property. And if you click on that, you got all these different options. So you've got left, center, right, and that's what you would expect. But then you also have top, middle, bottom. And you can do all these different combinations of this. So what I want is middle, center. Because that way, it'll be positioned in the both middle, vertically, and the center horizontally, and it'll grow out from there. All right, now what you'll see is now I've got two little dots for this. One of these is just that standard bottom left thing, but this center one, this is the kind of base point or insertion point, I think is the actual term, the insertion point of the text, meaning where's it going to grow from? And now I can see that it's there. So I'm going to just draw myself a little guideline here between the two midpoints of these lines. And then I'm going to take this little text, I'm going to move it. Actually, before I move it, I'm going to turn on insertion snap. So on my object snaps, I'm going to turn on insertion point. And that way, it should let me snap to that insertion spot. See? And now I can go and snap to the midpoint of my little thing. And now that thing is perfectly centered, both vertically and horizontally in the box. And I know for sure that that's true. And so now I can erase my little guideline. And now look what happens. If I double click on this and change it, see how it grows out from the center? So much better. I can name it whatever I want, you know, whatever, and it will stay centered no matter what. So there you go.
Jason,
Yeah.
I'm struggling to find the justify.
Well, let's put that back in your, hit that little button to the right one. Same thing with your layers and things that it in there. Okay, now hit that little button on the top, right? Over here. There. Okay, so okay, you collapsed your properties here. There we go. Okay, so select the text. And there's your justify. Yeah. You don't have the properties later. So select the text. Drag left. There. Nope. There you go. Okay. So in your case, it's like popping up when you select it. Okay. Because you're on Windows. There should be a way to like take this and stick it in there, but it might be, I don't know. But that's how your version is doing it.
Okay.
So, but there's your justify,
Okay,
right,
okay, that
and your
makes
style.
sense.
all that
Okay,
kind of stuff,
okay, thank you.
right? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else need help? Yes. Yeah, that's fine for now because you're actually not going to have a parentheses in real life. Because mine's kind of doing the same thing. I don't know if you can see it.
It just, yours looks slightly better spaced than mine.
Better, it does, doesn't it? What font are you? Same one that I was using? Yeah, okay. And what's your, go ahead and click on it for me to see that, your properties for it. Center is one. You sure that that midpoint is at the right spot? So let's go ahead and move it and see if we can make it snap. So hit enter. Okay. And yeah, click on that insertion point. And just go over to the right a little bit. There you go. Click. There you go. All right, now try to snap to the midpoint that way. No. There, see? There you go. Now see it, it's a little lower.
Yay.
There you go. Yep. Okay, anybody else? Okay. All right, now I want to do this one that is on the top. So I'm just going to take this same text, and for now, I'm just going to copy it up here. And this one is going to say make and model. Now, the problem is I don't want the same justification for this because I don't want this centered. I want it centered, but I don't want it in the middle because there's no middle here. So I want it to be positioned relative to the top of the box. So instead of middle center, I'm going to do bottom center. And then it flips that insertion point here to the bottom of the text. See that? And so now what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and move that, and I'm going to snap the insertion point to the midpoint of the box, the top of the box. Okay? Just so I know that it's in exactly the right spot, center-wise. And it's touching for now. And then once it's there, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to move, and I'm going to go up 0.5. So I know I've got that gap. And now this will grow out from the center, but it will never, that gap between the bottom of it and the top of the box will never change because I've got it justified bottom center. Okay? Yeah? Agree with me? Okay, so now let's do these ones inside the boxes. So we're going to switch to our other layer, our small text layer. And let me change my text style before I start typing. I'm going to switch to my small style. And this one is going to be input group info. So we'll do text. Same thing, I'm not going to put it in the box yet. Input group info. And what I want for this one is I want to be able to snap it to this left side of that rectangle, and then if I change what that says, I want it to grow out from the left, because I always want it to be in the start of it to be at the same spot over here on this left side. So what I want, but I also want it to be centered vertically inside the box all the time. So what justification option from our menu would make the most sense for this?
Middle left.
Middle left would make the most sense. Exactly. Middle left. There. Okay, so now I'm going to take it, I'm going to snap to that insertion point, and then I'm going to snap to the midpoint of that box, just like I did before. And once it's there, then I'm going to move it over, again, 0.5, just to keep that gap. And now, as I change this, I can put it, make it anything I want, and it will always stay where it needs to be. See? Yeah? All right. Now I can take this one and I can just copy it. Now watch real carefully what I'm going to do here. I'm going to select this. I'm going to hit copy. My base point is going to be the midpoint of this rectangle that it's sitting in. And then I'm going to snap to this midpoint and that midpoint. And the justification is going to stay the same, and I know that it's spaced correctly. And all I have to change is what it says, and it says source. Okay. And now I'm going to do one more here because I need the number. And I'm going to go ahead and just do a number 1. And this one I want to have be middle center again. Okay, now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to, again, snap to that insertion point once it's middle center. And I'm going to go into this box and I'm going to track down from here. And I really would like to be able to snap to the midpoint of this box, but the problem is it's a longer line than that. So I can't, there's nothing to snap to. See? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make myself a little guideline between these two midpoints that will give me something to snap to. Then I stick it there, and then I can just delete that line. Now I know it's going to be perfectly centered, and anytime I change it, it'll just grow out from that center point, center mid. Okay? And then I will go ahead and copy, and there we go. Now, if I want to change that to a 2, I can. And then all I'm going to do is, let's see what happens if I mirror this. Here's the catch. Look what happened. When I mirrored this, it mirrored it and it looks right, but it didn't flip the justification for the text. See? Just super annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. So the justification here needs to be middle right in this case. And you're like, oh no, it's now moved. Well, yeah, it is. So you're going to have to fix it. So you'll take that insertion point, snap it to the midpoint of that rectangle, and then move it again back your 0.5, and it'll be right now. And you do the same thing with this one. Middle right. And actually, I'll just erase that one and copy this other one. There, and these ones should still be middle center in there, yeah. Okay, there you go. There is your first device. Now, I'm never gonna have to draw that again in my entire life. Unless I decide to teach a class about, okay, then I have to draw it once every year. Okay? But I can use that now forever. Okay. I'm going to now just make a copy of this whole thing, put it over here, and we can do this other one that has the break line on it. And there's an actual command for this break line. And it's called break line. It says specify the first point of the break line. I'm going to go 1 unit to the left of the center of this thing. And then the second point is going to be 2 units from there. And then the location of the break symbol is going to be at the midpoint of that. And there it made it. But it's the wrong color, which tells me what? Wrong layer, right? So never fear. I'm just going to select it. And then up here at the top of this menu window, it tells me what that layer is, what layer it's on. And I just have to click on that drop-down menu and then select the layer that I want it to be on, and it'll shift it. And then I just need to trim my way around this because I don't like those overlapping lines. So I'm going to trim, and my cutting edges will be the break line. And then I can trim all of that out, even the overlapping things. And then there it is. That one's ready to go. Yeah. So I'm going to just type break line. You can also just draw a break line if you want, but I'm just trying to show you there's a tool for that. And you want to do first, it says specify first point for break line. I'm going to track from the midpoint here over to the left, 1 unit. And then the second point, I'm going to track over to the right, 2 units. That way it'll be 1 unit on either side. And it says specify the location for the break symbol. It defaults to midpoint, so I could technically just hit enter, but if you want to be sure, you can click on a midpoint. Now the other thing here is there is, I believe, a size variable for this object. Because I'm looking at it here and it's a little small for my taste. So if I make it again, let me try it again. I'm going to do break line. And I have an option for size, so let me hit size. Okay, the break line symbol size is defaulting to 0.5, so I'm going to set it to 1 unit and then try again. Tracking over 1, tracking over 2, midpoint. Ooh, that's better. I like that so much better. Put it to the right layer. We'll trim using the break line as the cutting edge. And we're in business. Okay. So that's the basic idea here. You're going to go through and do all these other things. There's a couple of things I want to show you. Maybe 2 more things, just drawing things that I haven't taught you yet. One is, you see this little thing where we're using that NL4 connector for the loudspeaker? That is using what's called a dimension style. So let me just draw a couple of lines to represent that. So let's say those are my 2 lines. And dimensions have styles too, which you get using dim style command. It brings this up, and just like in text styles, you don't want to use the standard one. let's make our own here. We'll call this sound dim JR. And you can say, we're going to go ahead and use this for everything. We're going to inherit the standard properties for now, use for everything. Then it pulls up these properties. A couple of things you're going to want to do is go under the text. You're going to want to say what text style you're going to use. Don't use standard. Use your sound small one. Let's start there. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to use this layer, and I'm going to use the dim command, D-I-M. And then I'm going to snap to these midpoints, and you see how it makes this little thing, okay? And I can kind of stick that where I want it. Now, yes?
Show it again once you finish showing.
Yeah. So let me start over. So you're going to go to dim style, enter. It brings up this window. You're going to make a new style. And you just want to go in to the text property and make sure you're using one of your text styles. I would say the small one. Okay. Once you click OK, then you want to make sure over here in properties that that's your active dimension style. See, it's where sound dim JR.
You got me lost already.
Okay. Everybody look. Eyes up. Dim style. Enter. Brings up this layer. Yours is going to look like, you're going to just have standard. You're going to hit the plus button. You can call it whatever you want. I called mine sound dim JR. And then it's going to pull up this window. It has all the different properties for this thing. And the first thing I just want to change is I go to text tab and do text style and select my text style. And then click OK.
That's where I was.
Okay. And I'm going to make sure it's the active dimension style here because I just want to see what it does if I use it. And I'll hit the command now to use it is just dim, enter. And I'm going to click to the top and then bottom, and there it is. Okay, now, so I've got this thing. Now, it's not exactly what I want because I don't want a number here. What this is trying to do is just trying to tell me how far apart these lines are, but that's not what I'm using it for. I just want it to say something. So let's take a look at our properties here. Okay. See where it says text override? I'm just going to type an L4. And then it will not use that that dimension number and instead use that label. The only other thing I might want to do is make my arrows a little bit bigger. So I can go back to the style and select modify from this drop-down menu. And my arrow size is right now 0.18. I'm just gonna like make those bigger. I don't know, like 0.3 maybe. I make them 0.3, then let's see what happens. I think I'd still like them a little bit bigger. So symbols and arrows, arrow size, let's try 0.5. Did it take? Yes. Oh, that's better. I like that. Okay. So that's how you get the that little NL4 dimension thing. Last thing I need to show you that you haven't learned yet is the hatch. And that's what's going to get you that solid dot. Okay? So I'm going to use the circle command to make the circle first. Put it on the right layer. Switch to that layer now. So I've got the circle. And now I'm literally going to type the command hatch. Hatch is back in the days when we did this with pencils and paper. When you wanted to fill something in, you would literally use a pencil and you just like draw a bunch of lines. It's called hatching. Okay, so you hatch, and it says okay. It drops down this little menu for hatch. Now you want to do this little tile up here. You want to drop that down and select solids because you don't want a pattern here. You just want a solid. Select solids, and then it'll just do the same color, and then. It just do a solid color. And then you got these two smaller boxes. And one of them is the background color, and the other is the actual color. You want to use the actual color, and just make sure that's set to by layer. Should default to that, but if you've been hacking around in AutoCAD, you might have changed something here. Just make sure it says by layer, and that way it'll just inherit the layer color itself. And then I'm just going to click this button that says Select Boundary, which is like what's the edge around which this hatch will sit. So I hit Select Boundary, and I go and click the edge of the circle, and it fills it in. And then I can close that, and I'm done. Okay. You now know everything you need to know to draw the rest of this stuff. Yes?
I noticed when you move the dim style lines over, it does that overlapping thing, but you can't use the trim tool.
Yeah.
What's the best way to get rid of those overlapping lines and messing here?
Well, first of all, you don't have to drag it out. You can just, line it up. But there might be a way you can turn on those. You can turn off those extension lines.
Okay.
Right, and then they go away. The other thing I'm going to do, and this is where layers get really useful, I'm never going to delete these single lines here that are on these rectangles because I need those for snap points when I connect lines to those. But so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to, in my layer list, I'm going for that equipment one. There is these little columns here, and you see how this one, if I hover over this one, it says line weight, and all I can see is DE, but it stands for default. And my default, I don't know, let's see. My default line weight right now is 0.25 millimeters. I can get that from either typing line weight, or I can get it from this drop-down menu, format line weight. So it's defaulting to 0.25. What I want to do is I just want everything on this equipment layer to be a little bit thicker than that. So I'm going to set that to 0.35. That way those lines will always be a little bit thicker, and I'll not have to worry about that overlapping line rendering problem because those lines will be thicker anyway, and it won't be a big deal. And that line weight only shows up usually when you go out and print it. If you want to make sure you've done it, you can turn on here at the bottom the show hide line weight thing, and you should see that line be thicker. Just to make sure you've done it right. I usually don't like to have those turned on when I'm drafting, but if you just want to make sure you've done it right, then you'll know. Now those lines will always be thicker, which is good. And you can notice in my example, if you now look carefully, you can tell that those lines are just a little bit thicker than the other ones. And I think that makes it look a lot nicer. Okay? But it also fixes my overlapping line problem. Okay? Because sometimes you need those overlapping lines. I don't want to get rid of them because I need those snap points. So there you go. And then you can turn off the display line weights later. Okay, that's everything you need to know to do this. So once you make all these things, then you can use them to make the drawing. Okay? And then you turn it in. So you're allowed to like draw lines now, and you can draw stuff, use whatever commands you want. I don't really care. Try not to venture too far out of the realm of what I've shown you, though, because what I've shown you will definitely work. I'm trying to teach you, like, I don't want you to have to memorize 1,000 commands in AutoCAD. So I'm trying to teach you to do it with the command line, but I don't want you to have to memorize every possible command in AutoCAD. So I'm trying to show you, this is like the offset tool, for example. I'm not going to teach you the offset tool. Yeah, it exists. I'm not going to teach it to you because that's one more command you got to put in your brain, and like you're not really going to draw all that much stuff in your life. You're going to draw it once and then never. We're not drawing scenery here. We're drawing boxes and lines, and we're going to draw that box and line once in our life and then never again. So I only need you to learn learn like 10 commands in AutoCAD, and that's all you're going to need to do everything. So you can experiment with commands if you want. I really don't care. But my advice is, like, don't get too crazy with that. There's a lot of commands out there. And some of them are really cool, but then you got to remember them. Okay, so you should be able to draw all this now. I've already shown you the polygon command you can use for these triangles. Use that if you want, or just draw the triangle. You know how to do it now. This is maybe a weird symbol. Anybody got any ideas how we would draw that?
Whole bunch of circles.
Whole bunch of circles and then trim, right? See how your brain's starting to do the thing now? Yeah, let me show you. So circle, I'll start with a 0.5 radius circle, and then I'll do another one that's a 1, and then I'll do another one. Oops. And I'll do another one that's a 1.5. I'm just using the same center point for all of these. This will be a 2. And then I'm just going to create some lines I can snap to. And I'm going to turn on quadrant snap, so I can snap to that quadrant. And then I'm going to go up 45 degrees. And if your 45 degrees doesn't work, you can turn it on in your polar tracking. Okay, so I'm just going to do line 45 degrees there. Then I'll mirror that line from here to there. Oops, hang on. Am I going too fast? Then I can trim using those lines as the cutting edges. And then boom, 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 boom. See? Easy. Okay, got just shy of 10 minutes here for any last questions or things you want to work on. And then you can crank this thing out this week. Okay?